Very own outreach and communication specialist. So, welcome everyone to How To Tuesday. We're very excited that you're here. I just can't wait to hear from Finn what he's going to talk about today. So, take it away.
Thank you. I'm not used to having a host. Last time I had to do all of the talking and introduction, so it was nice that you were actually able to break the ice here for
For
me.
sure.
All right. So yes, we're going to be talking about the power of pictures and hidden bias. So for starters, let's talk about what bias is. Um, so bias is an approach from one perspective. It can be misleading since it doesn't show the full picture. This is a wonderful illustration here from Marshall McLuhan. He was the father of media theory. He wrote a lot of stuff about media literacy back in like the 60s and 70s. But as you can see here depicted, there is, a kerfuffle going on back here, and this is what is being portrayed in this image. It looks like this person has the knife, but in fact, it's this person that has the knife. So this is supposed to be a representation of this is your news outlet, and this is the full picture of what's going on. So what is image bias? It is the narrative that we attribute to images accompanied by text, usually a story. Um, so I said story instead of news because it's not necessarily, even though that is where the term originates from, it's not something that we typically are um, coming in contact with frequently in our life. I mean, some of us are up to date with news, but a lot of times there's other things that come into play, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So, three common types of bias is confirmation bias, which takes advantage of our already set beliefs, framing bias, which controls the perspective, events, and story it is viewed from, and emotional bias, which takes advantage of our anger and sympathy. And the first thing that came to mind whenever I thought of emotional bias was the ASPCA commercials where they show the really sad music and the animals that need to be adopted. Um, like I said, that was the first one that came to mind for emotional bias there. So, where can we have image bias? Anywhere, as I said earlier, it's not limited to the news outlets. Um, I don't know about you, but I don't spend hours scrolling through news articles, but I do scroll through hours of media on Instagram and TikTok. It's not exactly the same, but it's kind of similar on a smaller scale. Usually, you can discern how to feel about a story based on how it's presented by the person. If you think about when two influencers or celebrities have a falling out and they have beef with one another, and you see the different sides of their stories, and they have, different things that they are using to back those up. So you can kind of see the how two stories can seem to be true at once. I also wanted to mention here that AI generated images and videos also have been used increasing lately, which makes it even easier to portray a biased perspective and harder to discern. A little light example of this was sometime last year, there was this video of bunnies on a trampoline that I fell for. Because it's so cute, and I want to imagine that these bunnies were like, "Oh, this is really fun. I love jumping. This is even better." Um, but it was in fact shortly after debunked as AI. I think this CCTV ring cam style video is pretty easy to replicate due to its low quality, and I just wanted to include this to show even though you might think that you're really good at discerning whether or not an image is real or fake, it can be difficult. Um, so, oops. Okay, you weren't supposed to see that. There is going to be a pop quiz. We'll get to that in a moment. Um, so why do people use images with their text? Well, the most simple answer is images make all of the text and the talking less boring. Um, that's the most simple, most across the board answer. Another answer is engagement and the term rage bait, which is engagement, but if something makes you angry, you're more likely to interact with it. That's just how human psychology is. All press is good press type mentality. Using images help ground the story, whether or not most stories aren't black and white, so portraying it in a way of like seeming like it's clearly this one person versus this event, or it makes it so much easier to break down a story if you start thinking about it in smaller parts. And the last one is validation, continuing the narrative that makes you feel validated in your beliefs. Something that came to mind for this one for me is like if you see some news article where a package thief gets caught. They get caught at the doorstep. You're like, yes, finally something happened. Maybe like it doesn't bring the package back that got taken from my doorstep, but it's good to see that there's justice in the world. Um, so now we are gonna move into the pop quiz portion. So based on what we talked about earlier, which of these correlates with which one of these titles? The confirmation bias, the emotional bias, and the framing. So, engagement goes to emotional bias. It makes you angry. That's an emotion. And same thing with, ASPCA commercials. Grounding the story, black and white, makes it easier to be simplified, framing it, and validation, being confirmed with your beliefs. So now we're moving on to practice. I'm going to show two images that are kind of in the same category of news articles, and we'll break down aesthetically what's going on in those images, and then I will show you two headlines that will correlate with each one of the images. So this topic is about social media. So we have two different images here portraying the same things. They kind of give very different vibes. The one on the left, there is two people in frame, which automatically, there's community there. We are familiar with what all of those icons mean on the screen, popping up, the hearts, the smiley faces, the likes. Those are all terms of engagement. There's a lot of communication going on the screen. People are writing things. We're seeing other people's lives on the screen. Someone's scrolling through Instagram, and there's just a lot of color going on. And here on the right, we have a young girl who is sitting alone. There's a lot of muted colors. As you can see, this phone is really clearly in focus, and everything else is out of focus and a little bit blurry. She has headphones on. You can't clearly see her face. All that you can really see and what's in focus is this phone. So the first title is social media addictive? The science reveals what's at stake. That has a clear tone to the language being used here. The second one is how to make friends and influence algorithms. Uh, so again, language. I broke down addictive. The science reveals what's at stake. Those are all very heavy language. Um, there's a sense of urgency going on, addictive. How to Make Friends and Influence Algorithms is a play on this old book. That's a self-help book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So it's a little cheeky nod to that. Um, Make friends, influence. Those are the main points in that article. And here we have these two images, very different from the last one. So here we have a sort of hero shot of a firefighter standing in front of the flames. You can't see anything else in focus. All of this fire is taking up all of the frame, and it is just his sole figure here. Uh, Very dark aside from all of the light with the fire. And over here, broad daylight, everything is in focus. We have a yellow fire line, do not cross here. Everything is really destroyed. You can see a door there in the back through all of the debris, but there's not much left there in the image. So here is the one title, elderly resident of two generations lost home in one night, quotation marks watch. not quotation marks, parentheses. And the second one, off-duty firefighter runs into burning Parkville home to help neighbor escape. So, oops, hello. Elderly resident of two generations. That is the category. Who is the person being affected? How long have they been there in one night? Those are two different uh, time periods, so you can really get a sense of how much has been affected. Off-duty firefighter runs is the action, and escape, again, the language is uh, very hopeful there. So here is our next step is how do we look closer? Using the images that we just looked at, I'm going to be going over how to break down more so the images like an artist would. So we would look at who is the person in the photo, what expressions do they have, and what do you think that they are feeling? Oops. What what objects are in the photo? Are they literal or are they symbolic? And characteristics, is it colorful? Is it muted? What colors are being used? Is there a lot of motion? How does it make you feel? Tense, happy, awe, sympathetic? That all plays a part in the story that's being portrayed. So let's pretend that it was a different image in the fire photo, and instead it was this one. So the title is there below. What characteristics do you notice, and what message do you get from this image as paired with the title?
Definitely doesn't hit as hard.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel as like, oh my gosh.
hmm It's
Donkey
definitely
Kong
a
got
much
hammered.
close up picture.
Yeah, fire damage is like implied, I guess, because the monkey,
hmm
like I can still tell what it is from
Looks like
looking.
Donkey Kong got hammered a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The monkey is really not in good shape at all.
Yes.
So, if this is a more symbolic image, there isn't anything in frame, but there's symbolism to a stuffed animal. You can assume that maybe it was a child who was also affected by the fire. There's no, that's a bit of storytelling going on of like, why this picture? What does the close-up mean? There's a lot of debris around it. The monkey is in poor condition. Um,
that's a travesty right there.
yeah, it
Donkey
really
Kong's
is.
injured.
uh
Yeah.
you're
Well,
sympathetic towards the event that happened, and kind of the message that you could get from that is, oh, I hope that the child is okay. What a terrible thing to experience. um we have another one here, or we go back to this image. So is social media addictive? The science reveals what's at stake was the title that was correctly paired with that image. uh I kind of went over what the characteristics were a little bit. Everything is pink, which again is another, if you think about typical gender symbolism, pink is very, young girl coded. Cameras in focus on phone, face is hidden. The mood is you're kind of depersonalized. You can't see her expressions. Again, all of the focus is on the phone. It feels very isolating that there's all that space around her, but there's all of the focus is in that one area. And what you could assume, a message that you could get from that is kids these days are so vulnerable to this phone in their pocket. So for a summary, the image bias breakdown, who is being shown, how does it make you feel, what is the language being used, can all help you build what the story is. Something that I actually put earlier in the presentation, but I thought would be a good ender, is the fact that this isn't a situation where you want to try to get rid of your biases. We all just have biases going through life, but it's important to investigate where your biases come from. Is it something that you generalized? Is it something that is harmful? Is it yours, or did you adopt it from someone else or somewhere else? Um, and how to kind of break that down is get more perspectives and ask questions and find competing stories to see how it's framed for them. Um, so that was my presentation on image bias.
That was awesome. Do we have any questions for Finn?
Well, I know back in the, I